Hi, everyone. This is Dave Patterson. I'm a librarian at College of Marin Library. Today is May 5th, 2026. I am in Kentfield, California on Zoom with two wonderful people. Wilbur, I forgot your last name, Wilbur
Uh,
Sabino.
Ben yeah, Benitez Sabino.
Benitez Sabino is in his home, and he's joining us from, where do you live, Wilbur?
Oh, I'm in San Rafael.
San Rafael. And he's a student at College of Marin about to transfer to a four-year college. And we're also very lucky today to be interviewing the Reverend Zoila Schoenbrun of Belvedere, who's lived in Belvedere since the year I was born, 1965, and who was a next door neighbor to the famous psychologist Erik Erikson. So, without any further ado, Wilbur, would you like to take it away?
Yeah, all right. So I'd like to start off like the first question. I was wondering, how did you meet Erik Erikson?
Okay. Well, that's an easy one to answer. We met in the middle of the 70s, in 1974. And Dick and I, my husband is a retired psychiatrist in the Jungian, Carl Jungian persuasion of practice and methodology. And so our rector at St. Stephen's Parish in Belvedere had met the Eriksons not too long before that, and because he was dealing with two psychoanalysts, he thought they should meet. So we were invited to a dinner, which actually featured for all of us a time with Alan Toffler, the novelist, pardon me, the writer of uh, uh, Future Shock, which was a
Right.
big hit at that time because of not it was not so much a prophetic work in the sense that we think of as prophecy, but it certainly was in a very introspective kind of book in terms of what the future might hold. So that's how we met at dinner.
Oh,
An offer.
yeah. Uh, and I'm curious, what was your impression of him, your first impression?
Awe,
Mm.
because I knew who he was. Our friend, I'm going to call him John. John Thornton was the rector at St. Stephen's, had mentioned them both. Um, his wife, Erickson's wife, Joan, was a uh, very much a presence at St. Stephen's when they lived here for periods of time at that point. They had not moved to this area, but they were coming from um, um, the East Coast to spend a kind of a quarter at Mount Zion where Erik was teaching. So, so he had mentioned them to us, and of course, Dick was very interested in meeting him and hoping that he would hold up to a conversation with Erik Erikson.
Oh, okay. Did he come off as someone who's like very talkative?
Not really.
Oh,
He was quite introverted in a real sense, but it was wonderful because our first experience was with this eventful evening of meeting Alan Toffler as well, to hear them talk back and forth, you know. So we were more listeners than we were active participants.
ah.
Um, uh, Let us remember that at that point, I was not even yet 40 years old, and my husband was not yet 42 years old. So these were, you know, really impressive human beings that we thought it was wise to listen to them rather than to try to take the conversation to them.
Oh, understandable. I'm actually kind of curious. When he did move into your neighborhood, what kind of neighbor was he?
Well, by that time, this was in they actually moved to Tiburon before they moved to Belvedere. So they
Ah,
lived in a lovely house in Tiburon overlooking the bay. But it was a three-story house, and at some point that got to be too much for them. So they bought the house that was on sale right next door to us. They knew we were going to be their neighbors, and so they thought that was charming. And but Erik, and this happened in the early 80s. Um, so by that time, he was really beginning to slow down. He was having some genuine physical problems, um, and um, and he was beginning to slow down. So mostly, I think the kind of neighbors we were is what you always hope for in a neighbor, which is if you need anything, call me.
Oh,
You know, in other words, we were not, we did not want to take advantage of our relationship. And there were many people who still came to him and visitors with much more credentials than just being a neighbor. And so we really did let them lead in the friendship as neighbors. But having said that, we did some wonderful things together as friends. So when you get to that point in your questioning, I will tell you a couple of stories.
all right. And let me see. Um, I'm kind of curious on you already kind of gave us an insight, but did you ever show any interest in any like interesting hobbies or anything that might really like surprise us to know about him?
Well, I glanced at that as I was glancing at all the questions this morning. Um, I don't. You are aware, of course, that he was an artist himself.
I
oh,
did
I
not
didn't
know
know
that.
that.
You
No.
did
Wow.
not know that. Oh, yes. In fact, it was one of his assets as he began his exposure to and early training in child psychology.
Hmm.
And this was back when he was still at the beginnings of his evolving career. And uh, in fact, there's a wonderful story. Um, but in any case, some Dick, who is himself a little amateur artist, he likes to do watercolors, um, bought him a whole set of watercolors. Eric's media was actually woodcuts. So he never really took to the watercolors. But having said that, I I don't remember him having any particular hobby in the time that we knew him.
Oh, all right.
But you should know that he is an artist.
We
And
know that now.
yeah.
Yeah.
You had mentioned earlier that you typically tended to listen to him whenever he would talk about anything, but I was curious, did he ever by any chance talk to you about the field of psychology? Like, or if he didn't talk much about it, how would you say he expressed himself about the field whenever you heard him speaking about it?
hmm Well, I think psychology was always in the background, no matter what else was the subject of conversation. So let me say that there were times when I was very conscious of his kind of listening through um, that um, presupposition that he was learning something about who you were as a psychological figure, as a person of consciousness, and where you stood in that place. And he always had some remark to make about that. So I think that the lens through which he saw the world was always through this perspective he had on it. And I might add a little story here that is not my own particularly, but it came to us through another individual who was a friend of his. And it had to do with his early years and his sense of um, how am I going to, raising the question with Anna Freud, how am I going to do this work? I have no um, background for this work, although he was working with children at the time. And so Anna Freud apparently took that question to her father, and Freud is supposedly have answered, um, tell him not to worry about that. Tell him to give people a way to see, a way to see.
A way to see.
Wow.
Wow is right. Exactly. I can say no more. Just wow.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And I think he did do that in a very, very particular way. Um, he wanted people to see the world from the inside out.
Wow. Um, did he ever tell you any stories about his childhood, perhaps? I know that he worked a lot with children, but I've always been curious. Is there anything that as he was growing up, possibly made him want to ch chase the field of
He,
psychology?
he may have done that with my husband, but I can't claim that I know that. I think I could see the child in him, if the
Mhm.
question were put in that regard, yes. But specifically, I am not a psychologist,
Mm,
um, but I am an interior person, so we connected on that level.
Awesome. Thank you, Sola. I have a bit of a fun question for you. I was curious if Erik Erikson ever shared any of his theories with you while in the process of like maybe didn't in particular go too much into it, but did he ever like maybe reference something that he might have been working on at the moment?
Well, this takes me to a personal story. The answer is yes, maybe. Um, when in 1975, John Thornton and his wife, and Dick and myself, and Joan and Eric made a trip to Spain together. And the purpose of that trip, well, let me back up a little bit. My husband and I, Dick and I, had been in Israel for 2 weeks prior to meeting everybody in Madrid. Joan and Eric had gone to London to visit Anna Freud.
Hmm.
And um, the John and Jan just, pardon me, John and Mitzi just went to Portugal to have fun. But we met in Madrid um, on June 1st, 1975. I remember well because June 1st is my birthday.
Ah,
And so,
how
well,
old would you have been in 75?
I just turned 40.
Okay.
And um, Joan, his wife, who had a tremendous amount of influence on him, not often recognized just how much, um, he wanted to do a pilgrimage to the foundations, believe it or not, the foundings of monasteries and convents of St. Teresa of Avila and St. John of the Cross. And the background to that is that she and I belonged to a contemplation group, and we had been reading Teresa of Avila,
Mm.
been reading St. John of the Cross, and Joan, with her enthusiasm, uh, put it into Eric's head that he might consider doing one of these um, biographies that he'd done as Gandhi and Luther, of
Yeah.
these two figures. So that's why we went. And in the context of that, he asked to borrow my autobiography of St. Teresa of Avila so he could read it, and we would have coffee time early in the morning because everybody else was a late sleeper, and talk about the book. And
Wow.
I still have that copy of that book,
Wow.
created by Erik Erikson. And it was in that context that I was able to glean a little bit about what he was searching for in that figure. He never really did write about her. He was considering writing about Kierkegaard and other figures. Uh, but we did get him to do a what we used to call celebration Saturdays, um, and focus on the contrast between Saint Teresa of Avila and Soren Kierkegaard,
Wow.
two existential figures. And I don't know, maybe I should just stop there.
That's amazing.
So it was in that context that I got to, as I say, to glean some of his thinking, how he approached a figure like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Let's see. I'm really curious about the way that he spoke, whenever he would talk about the field of psychology. It seems like he's someone who was very passionate, about the field, but I'm kind of curious, how did he sound like whenever he would speak about it? I know that you had mentioned earlier that he seemed to have been someone who talked with such high intelligence.
Mhm.
But I'm kind of curious, how did he sound whenever he would talk about the field?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say that we had frequent opportunities because by invitation to go listen to him lecture at Mount Zion.
Well, where is Mount Zion?
Mount Zion is in San Francisco,
Hmm.
hospital in San Francisco.
Oh, it's at a hospital. Got it. Okay. It is a hospital.
And,
Okay.
and he used to come, as I say, in kind of like the spring quarter and do some teaching there.
I see.
And he had good friendships with a couple of upper level union analysts as well. So it was kind of fun to see them interplay with one another as through their perspectives on the field of psychology and where it was headed mostly. And so I, you know, people express passion in different ways. Some people are very effusive. Some people use humor. Some people are just very, what should I say? They're risk takers and they really expose themselves when they speak from that depth. Uh, I would say that he was mischievous. He had a wonderful sense of humor,
Hmm.
and he would just bring up a little phrase or a little that you just take that one away with you, and that was sufficient, kind of thing. So he was beguiling in his teaching, and a rumor has it, and I have read it as such that when he was teaching at Harvard, his classes were just overflowing
I imagine.
at the height of his what he had to offer. Yeah.
Right.
Um, I'm really curious. Um, it seems like Erik Erikson did a lot of wonderful work and was someone who's very important. I'm curious, did he seem like a happy person? Do you think that would you say that his work made him a happy individual?
That's a tough question. That's really a tough question because looking at the time in which we met him and in which our friendship evolved, and we uh, we knew him. We saw him just before he died. We flew back east. So he died in 94. We knew him 20 years,
Wow.
generation of time. And uh, at the middle of the 70s, he was beginning to get some really harsh uh, valuation by other psychology centered people. And that was very difficult for him.
Sure.
Those were not the happiest days of his life, as we heard of them. And I'm sorry, but I don't feel I can go more deeply into that. But that was from the perspective of his concern that somehow his persona was not good, was not dependent on the value of the work that he had done and that he had left for others to work with. So I think he was struggling with that, and we certainly were present for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zoila. Well, I have another question for you. Um, it seems like Erickson was a good friend, and I'm kind of curious, what did friendships mean to him?
They were very important, very important. As you can imagine, I would say that this is probably generally true of people who have that kind of a presence in the world. You might be suspicious a little bit as to why people want to access you, and you might allow yourself to be accessed just for the purpose of setting that aside, or in fact, as a way to counter any um, evaluation of you or your work. So I think he was as present as he could be in the moment that he found himself in.
Thank you so much.
And Wilbur, you found a beautiful quote. If you are on question number 6, I'm looking at that. Do you mind sharing that quote with us? And then maybe that
Yeah,
was the first part of that question. Then maybe Zoila could meditate on that beautiful quote because that was a quote that was new to me.
yeah. So Erik Erikson once said, life doesn't make sense without interdependence. We need each other, and the sooner we learn that, the better for us all. My professor in psychology, he kind of went into that in the first semester, and
Mm,
basically interpreted from that was that accomplishments mean nothing in the face of friendship, and that's just something
mm.
that's always stuck with me. And so, anyway, what do you think about that quote, Soda?
I think he was right on, and I think that the life that he lived here um, uh, demonstrated that. He became a beloved figure and a totally available figure in our own little parish church. Uh, Mind you, his wife was a member, but I never saw him push beyond what he felt he would do willingly, not even for Joan. And uh, he made himself available whenever we asked him. In fact, there's a wonderful story about a Christmas pageant where the rector, again, this same wonderful rector we had then in those days, persuaded Eric and my husband Dick and another wonderful young military man who was a psychiatrist and stationed in San Francisco to all be the wise men in the pageant. Okay.
The three wise men.
And boy, did they take to it with vigor and humor, and it was just wonderful. So he still had that playful person inside of him.
That's amazing.
My husband has it too. So they were quite a pair. Uh, so yeah, I
Erik Erikson as one of the three wise men. Wow.
the other wonderful story that is very personal indeed is when we went to see him, and he was he was dying. And we got into Harwich, which is where he was in Massachusetts, and went to the place where he and Joan had lived, and she wanted to take us over to see him right away. So um, he pretty much had free reign to visitors any time of the day or night that Joan approved of. So I think it was about 10 o'clock at night, and we walked into the darkened room. He was, and Dick went on one side of him, and I went on the other side. And Dick bent down and whispered to Erik, Erik, it's your next door neighbor. And he just opened up and opened his eyes and said, glad, glad. That's all.
He said God, G-O-D,
No,
God.
he said glad, glad.
Glad, glad.
We had to finish it. He was glad to see us. And afterwards, I think the takeaway from this story for me was a reality, really. Most of us don't know what to say when we go into a situation like that. Um, Dick just had that relationship. Um, and Joan said, people come in here and go to him, people he's known for years. And she said, and they just come in cheerful, et cetera, saying, how are you, Erik? He says, what did they expect him to say?
Right. He's dying. Right.
So it taught me a pastoral lesson as a priest, how important it is to be where the other person is and not bring that person to where you hope he would be.
Wow.
Oh,
What a treasure you're giving us. All these memories.
Yeah, they're very much alive. Yeah.
thank you
Now,
so much.
Wilbur, were there other questions that that you had? Because I had two, but I can't remember if we've gotten through all of your questions.
I had one last question.
Yes.
I was I was curious, sort of, how do you think Erik Erikson would feel to know that his life continues to make an impact in students today? How do you think he would feel to know that his legacy lives on?
I think he is feeling just great about that. That there's nothing more negative to say about him.
Right.
So all that is behind him, and only what is worthy and worthwhile has remained.
Mm.
It's beautiful. Thank you, Sola. And Dave, did you want to ask your questions?
Yeah. Well, I have three questions. One is about his wife, Joan. Wilbur, Zoila had a wonderful friend, Dorothy Jones, who passed away about a year ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And she had this beautiful picture of Joan in her living room. And when I would go visit her, Joan just seemed to radiate intelligence and perceptiveness. Can you talk a little bit about Joan,
Oh,
please?
yes. Well, um, when she was a person of great depth, and in the latter years of Eric's life, um, it was intentional to let the world know how much she had contributed to his work. In those days, the woman behind the man was still very much a cultural perspective,
Sure.
and so it was hard for her to stand out in her own right. but she did her own writing. She did her own work. She was a wonderful um, jeweler. She made
Oh,
jewelry. I have some of the jewelry she made. Um, and she was a dancer, you know. That's how she began. That's how they found each other at a
I
masked
didn't
ball.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's when they fell in love.
At a masked ball.
A masked ball.
Wow.
And she she was well trained she'd gone to Columbia and got, I don't think she finished her degree, but um, in sociology. So she had a perspective also. And but when I first met her, I was just enchanted by her grace. She was in her 70s at that time. Is that right? Let's see. Uh, yeah, pretty close. She was born in 1902. So yeah. So anyway, um, um, she was deeply faithful, and by that I mean in the fullness of that term, not just a pious Christian, but uh, a person very much engaged in the virtues of Christianity in her, and not always recognized for that. And but she brought that to her work at Austin Riggs, you know, the center in Western Massachusetts,
Oh,
where she taught for a number of years,
oh,
and using the arts as the primary and as the focus for healing, not the other way around.
got it.
And um, so we did all these wonderful things together. And we became very close friends, she and I, especially. But there was no question that she had a very sweet attraction to my husband. You know, she had two sons and she missed them, I'm sure. So Dick was kind of a stand-in at times.
I see.
That picture that you saw in Dorothy's little living area was taken by Dick.
Is that right?
He was looking for he was looking for a new picture of her when a couple of her books were coming out in the early 80s. And she wanted him to photograph her because she's seen my husband did a lot of wonderful photography and has a dark room and all that.
Mm,
She's seen some of his work. And so in have you read Susan Erickson Vlolin's book?
no.
That's their daughter.
Okay.
Have
What?
you read it in your studies?
I have not, no.
Yeah. It's probably something to read because her perspective is neither of their two sons really wrote about him in detail, but hers is a memoir, and it's coming from a very different perspective. And so, in order to get the fullness of Eric and Joan, I think is a must read. I
Oh, I see. In the Shadow of Fame, a memoir by the daughter of Erik Erikson. Okay. We'll have
and
to look that one up at Wilbert.
you might want to have a second interview with me after that,
Yeah.
reading that. But in any case, to try to stay to your question, um, she was uh, she was just a model for me. One of the things she taught me, and here I was, as I say, in my 40s, she says, always cultivate younger people as good friends.
Ah,
And now that I'm almost 91, I understand that because I've lost so many friends.
yeah.
And it's the younger, and I took her advice. I have a lot of young friends, and they were, you know, it's just wonderful to
Yeah.
to have that energy. It gives me energy.
Yeah.
Her, and she, one of the reasons they moved back to Cambridge is because they were being offered a place where they could live intergenerationally with individuals.
Wow.
A couple of colleagues, but of Eric's colleagues, but also the young people. Whenever we visited there, the young people were just flocking to the center, the Erikson Center there in Cambridge.
Sure.
Did I answer
Um,
your question?
yes.
I find myself a little bit going around it.
No, that was perfect. I have a couple more questions. Wilbur, I don't know if you remember, we talked about the fact that Erik Erikson is not his original name, and that um, I
He
believe he
changed.
has a Jewish origin story. Can you talk about that, Zoila?
Sure, that's kind of Friedman's book, out of a biography by Friedman of Eric that was published shortly after his death. Really has all that down, but um, he basically was. His mother was Jewish. Um, she was married to a man who deserted her,
Mm,
and then she had an extramarital affair, which was it's still unclear, and Eric himself was not able to definitively say who his father was,
I see.
but um, he always felt that he was a Danish man, and he certainly looks very. Eric himself was very blonde, and then very much a Danish-looking person.
Mm,
His mother then married uh, a doctor who had actually been caring for them by the name of Hamburg, which is a
mm,
Jewish doctor. And so Eric took the name of Hamburg as he
okay.
was growing up. Then when they came to the United States, it seems to have been a joint decision by both Joan and Eric to uh, add the name of Erikson. So Eric Hamburg Erikson, that's where the EHE comes from,
I see.
initials. Now, in Jewish tradition, in Orthodox tradition, somebody is Jewish if their mother is Jewish.
That's what I understood. Yeah, if your mother's Jewish, you're Jewish.
Yeah.
And your mother's mother, isn't
Oh,
that?
I didn't know about the mother's mother, but I
Okay.
didn't know about the mother. So he had he did an awful lot of trying to explain all that. But unfortunately, I think a lot of the time it didn't come out sounding very authentic. So, that's what happened in the mid 70s when one of his former students came out and challenged Eric's authenticity, particularly in terms of his work on identity.
Yeah.
And um, so that's, I know.
Um, a couple more questions. I have a question about religion. I want to save that kind of as dessert because you're a priest. Wilbur, I believe you go to church.
I do,
I go
yes.
to church. That's how I know Zoila. We go to the same church. So I want that to be kind of dessert. Like, I'd like you to talk about the role of religion in his life. But first, I'm a librarian, and Wilbur was a library worker. I wanted to share with you some of the books that we have in his library.
Yes, yes, That was one of her last books.
Is that right? Yeah,
Uh,
it says Eric and Joan and Helen.
yes. And So are those yes. Hmm.
Looks familiar.
I
This
have
one,
I have that library too.
I bet you do. I bet you have an even more
Mine
extensive
are all
library.
signed by him or her.
Ah,
So let me ask you something. This is an aside, and maybe I should save it till after this. So
yeah,
don't let me forget.
sure.
I will make this part of the life cycle completed, and that is the book that preceded the one that Joan wrote, The Life Cycle Revisited.
This one preceded this one?
No,
No. Oh, okay.
uh,
Another one.
library is so far away. I hesitate to put you on hold, but she wrote a book about the ninth stage,
Oh,
and um, her basis for that is that they they lived beyond the eighth stage, and she certainly did. And she felt that they had not anticipated that sufficiently. They had inklings of it, but they had not, by the time that it was possible, Eric was no longer able to do it.
I see.
You know, he did get dementia at the end of his life.
How long would you say that dementia lasted?
Well, it was one of the reasons they moved back east and had that opportunity. Um, and they moved back east in 87.
Okay, and he died in
I think
94.
94.
So
But
about
it had
7, 8 years. Okay.
it had started before that here because we
Yeah.
did, yeah.
How about that one? I love the title, Toys and Reasons.
Yeah, wasn't that one of his, you know, he was very instrumental in starting a church school program at St. Stephen's that was almost identical to what we have since adopted, which is godly play.
Yeah,
He thought that children should be taught by God in a playful way.
a playful way. Really? My goodness. So our Sunday school program is
Well, godly play,
it's
it's been adapted and in use for probably 20 years now in the Episcopal Church.
uh-huh based in some way on his work.
Well, not, I don't think the person who did it would claim that, but
Right,
he
but
had
it's
it before because
similarities, yeah, similarities. What about this one? Identity, Youth, and Crisis.
yeah, that was one of his first ones and really one of his most important books.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. What do you have, Wilbur?
I have the exact same book.
Oh,
I
that's right. You have a
guess.
different edition. Got it. Um, and then what about this one? What can you say about
Oh
his
yeah. Well,
thoughts on Gandhi?
he won the Pulitzer Prize for that. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
And that's what really put him on the map. Well, um, that was one of the two books that put him on the map. And yeah, it's a powerful book. It's a must read. Have you read it?
I haven't read it yet. What about you, Wilbur?
No, unfortunately not yet.
You have to
Yeah.
read that book because it'll show you, it'll demonstrate to you how he thinks, how he approaches a figure like that. And as a consequence of that book, which is another side of his story, of Eric's story, is that he really became a figure that was sought after by the peace movement in whatever way it shows up.
Wow.
He contributed in all the years that he was at Berkeley were very difficult ones at the end when he left because he refused to sign the um, the oath that was being required of all professors at Berkeley.
Was
Oh,
that a kind of anti-communist oath or a oath
yes,
to be a
exactly. Yeah.
okay, so
The
he
McCarthy
refused.
era during the
Okay. I didn't know about that. Okay. All right. Well, the last question, and this is perfect because it's a little bit past 12 and we can wrap up in maybe 5 or 10 minutes, Zoila, um, is kind of religion. You're a priest. Wilbur and I are churchgoers. Tell us about Erik Erikson. We know he was a wise man in the Christmas pageant. What else can you tell us about his religious beliefs and his religious identity?
Well, I think it would be, I think he would say, he answered that question for himself in several. Um, are you familiar with the Galilean sayings?
No.
He wrote a treatise on the teachings of Jesus in the Galilean period before he came to the south, to Judea, before he came to Jerusalem. In the synoptic tradition, he comes to Jerusalem only once. So everything happens within a period of a year. In the Johannine, John the Evangelist tradition, he comes to Jerusalem 3 times. So they're quite different. But he worked on the Galilean sayings of Jesus and of Jesus as a teacher, which he acknowledged. As far as religion was concerned, he thought it was very important, and he addressed it in pretty much in terms of describing the importance of the I and thou relationship. And he was not he did not confess to being a Christian, or but that's almost left for people to decide when they read these particular works of his. He did a series of lectures at Harvard called the Jefferson Lectures, which you might want to look up,
Okay.
because he takes Jefferson as a kind of a model. Jefferson was very intrigued by the Galilean sayings of Jesus, and that Jesus, the teacher, and went to extremes. Really, he uh, he was the beginning of the Jesus movement just before the Jesus movement ever appeared in um, among the learned people of the in theology. So I would say that given his focus on the importance of I as a person who has will was central to his um, I won't call it faith, uh, but I will say this: he made it in conversation. He made it clear that the first stage, the importance of the virtue of trust, beginning with newborn life, if followed through all the other stages and maintained, will ultimately lead at the later stages, at the seventh stage, uh, as be recognizable as faith. And so you can make your own assumptions about why he maybe did not develop in those early stages as strongly as he did in his later stages, but they always remain there to be explored.
I see. Well, let's wrap up. Wilbur, let's hear your final thoughts, Wilbur. You could ask another question, or you could just reflect on Zoila's um, answers or anything you'd like to say, and then we'll let Zoila have the last word.
Yeah, of course.
Wilbur?
Yeah. Is there before we end, is there anything not mentioned in this interview that you'd like to share about Erik Erikson?
No, I feel pretty good given the fact that we only had an hour. Yeah. But your questions are wonderful.
Yeah.
You pursue them, okay, in your reading.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. And all the information that we learned today was really interesting. I had no idea that Erik Erikson had dementia, which is really interesting to me because I work in memory care at a retirement community.
That's right.
Yeah, so I was really surprised by that.
Can you tell Zoila a little bit about your work in the memory unit? Because I think she'd be interested to hear about that, Wilbur.
Yeah, I mainly work at like the front desk, so I don't work with like the memory care residents too much, but I do work with like families walking in and just greeting them, checking in with them, see how they're doing. I'm curious, how progressed was his dementia at the end of his life?
Well, the last time that I experienced him in a let's call it an academic setting was a in 1980. Let's see, was that 80, 89? In January of 89, I think it was, that Dick and I and John Thornton and his wife went to Cambridge to actually, I have just a minute.
Yeah, take your time.
1988 it was.
Okay.
Uh, um, he did a seminar that um, that actually in Cambridge that we went for the seminar ostensibly. We stayed at the monastery of St. John the Evangelist in Cambridge, and that's where I saw that it was pretty far-reaching his difficulties because the seminar was mostly in Joan's hands by that time, and he just made a very small contribution. Um, and so I think there were probably 30 or 40 participants there. I think everybody was aware of it with compassion, nothing other than that. But I think he had a better, as I observed it, he was able to communicate better when he was in a smaller group.
I
He
see.
could no longer really handle the largeness of that group, and that was a sign. So I would say that it was, pretty advanced
Oh.
Okay.
by 94 when he died.
Well, I'd like to reflect and then maybe you could have the last word, Zoila. Wilbur, is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, well, I don't know, Shola, if you're aware, but me and Dave have been working on a project in the library. It's for to do kind of like a display for Erik Erikson.
Mhm.
I was just curious, is there any ways or any suggestions you can make so that we can honor him properly?
Mm. So it's going to be a display of his books. We'll obviously have a picture of him. Wilbur thought we could get one of those big cardboard cutouts. It's life size. You
Yeah.
see that, those aren't too expensive.
When are you going
And
to, when are you going to,
well,
this?
I think Wilbur, we're running out of time here. Maybe in the fall, you're going to have to come back and visit Wilbur because Wilbur's going off. He's transferring this year.
Where are you
Uh,
going?
Right now choosing between UC Davis, possibly Merced or SF State.
Uh-huh. Good. All right. Both very good schools.
Thank you.
yeah. Yeah, we're so
Well,
proud of
if
Wilbur.
you're
He got
able to
accepted.
call, I can do some looking around here and see if I could share um, some of what we have, like you know, Dick did some wonderful photographs of them
Yeah,
individually and together, and we have a couple of his pictures of his woodcuts.
wonderful. We
And
could scan them so that you wouldn't have to worry about losing the originals. We could scan them maybe. Um, I'd like to reflect, first of all, Zoila. I think you can see from Wilbur's questions why I think so highly of him.
yes,
Um,
yeah.
Wilbur, you asked,
Question, just a minute, David.
yeah.
What are your goals? What is your uh, desire? How do you want to work in psychology?
Well, I'm really interested in research in particular. It's something that's really hard, but I want a nice challenge and I want to give back to the field the way that the field gave to me.
Mhm.
Um, that's why I think so highly of like people like Erikson and Freud too. I know she was a psychologist. So I want to honor the work that they did and also make my contribution to the field as well one day.
Great. All right. Good. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Wilbur, you can see why Zoila is so precious to me, this treasure trove of compassion and wisdom and experience. It's just amazing. So, um, Zoila, thank you for this hour, and we'd like you to just close with your final thoughts, whatever you'd like to say.
Yeah. Well, when one reviews one's own life from this vantage point, it feels like you've lived more than one life. And I know that's true for me because I know my own life, but I think it's true for many others. Some portions of a life can be very painful, and one does not need to revisit them um, without uh, denying that they are part of who you are. And I think that we need to be kind when we review another person's life and look to the results, the fruit that it bears, and not get too much hung up on the details.
It's beautiful. What a great place to end, and a great thing for all three of us to think about when we think about our own lives, and of course, Erik Erikson's life. Well, I think that's a great place to stop. Thank you, both of you. And let me stop the, let's see here. How do I turn off? Here we go. Stop recording. Are you sure